everybody, welcome to another episode of SaaS Talk with me, Varun Uday. I have Ashwin Krishna with me today. Ashwin heads the growth marketing team at Tack.ai, and he's a marketing veteran who's been helping SaaS and product companies across the map to achieve hyper growth for over 15 years now. Hey Ashwin, it's great having you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, Varun, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Ashwin. How's it been?
It's been good. I think I don't think I can call myself as a veteran, but suddenly what I can call myself is a marketeer by choice, especially SaaS marketeer by choice, an engineer by profession, engineer by education. Sorry, I get this wrong most of the times. So I think I've been quite fortunate to have found this passion of really helping companies to achieve hypergrowth through structured marketing programs, right? Very well planned, structured, thought through marketing programs.
Right. So I'm very eager to know what your journey has been like, Ashwin. Like, where did you start, and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure, great. I think majority of the people what they do is, especially in India, is they get into either engineering or medicine. I had a passion for medicine. I did get a medicine seat, but I didn't took it because I had the conception that okay, I should start my career very soon because of the financial constraints. And you're there, engineering. So did my engineering, then followed by rest of my friends to take up a job in a startup company. Joined a startup, got fired in the first 11 months because the company didn't do well. Then I think that gave me a lot of time to introspect, and I did get a job immediately, but it actually that 1 month I really spent time to understand what I really want to do, and I was actually not happy. I was not a good programmer. So I spent some time in the new job. I got a lateral movement into a marketing role, and then from there it was not I never looked back. So I think all the way from Juniper, where I joined after this startup, till that, I think it's been a phenomenal journey. I did get a chance to work with small startups, Fortune 500 company like a Juniper. I saw the journey of saw the growth journey of any company, right? From literally zero to let's say a possibly $1 billion plus, which is which is Juniper, right? I saw the processes, saw the thought process, saw how the teams are built and grown, from various stages, right? From 0 to 10, let's say 10 to 100, and 100 plus. So I think I've been fortunate to see companies across stages and across geographies, all the way from the US to Africa. That's about me actually.
That's a great story, Ashwin. Very inspiring, especially to us from Bangalore, because we can all relate with the engineering background and coming from there to marketing. And so it's very inspiring to know where it can take you if you do the right things, right? So let's get into growth marketing, Ashwin. What is growth marketing, and at what stage of the company does a growth marketer usually get hired?
Sure. I think that's a great question. I think the thing is, so the one thing which everyone, right, be it the founder, the marketing team, or a new person, new hire, which gets acquired and who gets hired into the company, everyone in the company or every entity, even the investor, right, what they would like is growth, right? Growth is possibly the most awesome thing, you know, uh, everyone would like, right? Because growth is progression actually, and hence, from the first principles thinking, I think growth actually starts from, it starts before you write the first line of code, right? Because growth possibly when you actually don't write a line of code and you have a product idea, growth is about moving from moving from three ideas, finalizing one idea, and then from one idea it's about building a prototype, and then so on and so forth, right? It's really like how does the journey of a seed to a sapling to a plant and a tree uh, goes, right? Then that's how journey of a startup or a company relates to. So growth, I think, starts from day zero itself, and it's really about the founder and the founding team has to be cognizant about the first thing they got to do from the growth point of view is, I'm not talking about the product side, I'm talking more from the branding and the growth side of it. Is about being absolutely clear about what's the purpose of the company, what is the value they want to bring into the industry, and what are the key problems they want to solve, and start talking about it, right? And that is nothing but building the brand, from day zero. And that's where I think the growth journey starts. And I think the first person who is responsible for growth is nothing but the founding team, right? Nothing but either the founder or the founding team. They have to be the custodians of the growth. Uh, a lot of the folks, they spend time on product, but there is another segment or another layer of growth, right? Which is about really building the brand. It's about really telling those stories, which very slowly translates into revenues, right? Revenue is a great indicator of growth. And even if before they write the first line of code, I think they should really start talking about what they want to do. Have a great website, and at least start, let's say, have a medium handle, and then start writing about it. I think that's where it starts. Put it short, the first hire or first person who would be responsible for growth is the founder or the founding team themselves.
Right. So you're saying the growth marketing team starts with the founders, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how does a startup at level zero start off building their growth marketing team?
Sure. So, so before I jump there, I will give a quick. I think we just have to introspect and really figure out, what should a company, let's say at level zero, right? Level zero is when they're trying to build a product, they're trying to find the product market fit. What are the few important things they got to do, right? Before jumping into the growth story, actually. I think the first thing they really have to figure out is, finding their ideal customer segment, because the market is always big. Entrepreneur thinks everyone is a customer, but the most important thing is to really refine and be logical and really put a very systematic framework figuring out, okay, how big is the market for a specific segment. You have, let's say, two or three segments you want to go after. Systematically thinking what are the filters you want to put in to refine these two three segments, boil down into one or two. uh, Revenue wise, what competitive products they are using, what is maturity of the company, and some of that, actually. I think it all starts with that ICP, and then second is really about, um, understanding, what are the key personas you're targeting. Let's say you're building a DevOps product, then who exactly in the tech team is going to use your product, right? Who exactly is going to buy your product? The 101 of, identifying the buying community. I think that's really crucial. That's really the foundation for growth marketing, because in marketing, the basic, you know, premise is finding your audience, right? I think now that you've found the type of the company you want to go after, the type of people who are going to use your product and buy your product, then it's all about, starting to implement, right? Starting to implement things. I think in the early phase where you're trying to find the product market fit, you would either have no money, right, when you're bootstrapping, and you would rather put all your resources in building the product, which is the right thing to do, and you would possibly raise some funds, but you have very little money, actually, right? And that's the situation for most of the companies. So what should we do, right? I think the basic premise is about understanding what is it that companies have to do at this stage with minimum effort and which would possibly give maximum impact, actually. Right. I think one model we can really use is, from the channel point of view, right? Is figuring out what's the demand for your product, in specific channels. So, for example, if you're working on a commoditized product, for example, we're working on a CRM product, for example, right? CRM as a search as a category has possibly a couple of 100,000 keywords, in Google search. So what it means is then you have to prioritize paid marketing, right? because there is demand and then people are searching and there is a very high intent for people to buy. To just extend this, right? You got to figure out, so what is the demand for your product across the different channels, be it LinkedIn, be it search. Are there any communities where your buyers go and hang out? So you got to find, different places your buyers and your users go and hang out. It's a tech product, there is Stack Overflow and there is developers, there is GitHub, and a whole bunch of other communities, right? So there is communities, there is channels where your users will go and hang out, and you have to figure out, okay, what is the volume of people who go there. For example, there is let's say you're targeting a niche product for pharmaceutical. Let's say there is a pharma community where people go and read stuff and they exchange notes, etc. And that can be possibly your first channel to go after, right? Rather than going after LinkedIn and spending money. So I think that's the premise actually. Looking at different options where your audience are moving, and then what's the demand, and then most importantly, are you able to achieve the objective you want to get done in level 0? So the stage at the stage 1, right? Stage 0 or stage 1, where you're trying to find a product market fit. The most important question you got to ask is like, how many customers do you want to talk to, and how many beta customers you want to scale in, let's say, 6 to 9 months, or let's say in 1 year. And then you're going to backtrack and use this framework to figure out what channels you can go after. And a couple of more things, right? I think, really in this stage. So going back to the storytelling, I think website is a great. It's possibly the single biggest opportunity most of the companies ignore. What they do is they get a freelancer. They possibly have the tech team to spend a couple of days to build a WordPress website, and they say, okay, the website is ready and we are good to go, right? So I think having the website is possibly one of the single biggest activities people have to do in this phase, because it's going to tell the story to multiple people, investors, your early hires, your earliest customers actually. So website is like super critical. I think that's number 2. Apart from the framework I said, number 2 is website. Number 3 is mostly the selling happens through founding team, right? The founders do the selling, they find the references and get this beta customers. And after that, I think the most critical point is, how do you really get stories out of these customers, early customers? Because customer stories is possibly one of the another important opportunity which B2B brands ignore, or possibly they try to do it but they don't get it right. So it's very critical for founding team to have this beta customer speak, let's say in a video or give a testimonial, talking about how did they actually win using the product. It's not about the startup or the company, it's about the customers, and where were the customers before the product. How did they become heroes by using the product? I think that's extremely critical actually. And third and the most important thing is about, we spoke about search. I think I will not go there. Third and the most important thing is really figuring out, especially if you're in an enterprise SaaS company, really you have to figure out how do you take a few companies from the ICP. I spoke about ICP. Start building content which is relevant for them, right? You build. I think one of the few things which have worked for us is, building a long form, extremely useful and relevant guide. Again, when you're talking about DevOps, let's say definitive guide for a DevOps engineer, right? Or a definitive guide for a DevOps manager. So what are the, let's say, 10 things DevOps manager have to look at in, let's say, scaling up the team, just for an example. And having this, I think, is very useful, where you can pick up 5 companies, have a set of email sequences where we can use this relevant content as a way to actually connect with people and do a bunch of follow-up calls. I think this is possibly the most cost-effective way to start the outbound outreach. right? Paid marketing, LinkedIn, everything is there. But I think one of the first things what actually also worked with Capillary in in the earliest days is cold calling. But right now, cold calling is dead. I truly believe that. But if you layer this cold calling with emails, emails, which is text-based email, 50 word or 100 word, just talking about how can we solve problems for the persona and giving them some really useful content. And after a few touch points, asking them for a meeting, with is going to work actually. Sorry, I actually took some time, but I think this is the most critical. I thought it is the most critical question, I think, which most of the startup founders will be looking for.
Those were some great points, Ashwin. Thank you so much for that. So I think, like you said, the founders start off with growth marketing, right? And like Dave Gerhardt says, the most successful founders are the ones that understand marketing, right? So I think founders who understand marketing play a vital role in setting up the foundation for the company's marketing and growth.
Absolutely. I think, sorry, just to add on, I think this is a very important point you made. Um, See, a founder has to be a multifaceted person, right? It doesn't mean that he or she has to be master of everything, but let's say, someone is a product veteran or someone is a engineering leader who start a company. But there are a few basic premises or basic things from the branding and the storytelling they got to do actually, right? So take the example of, let's say, Mark Benioff. He's a marketeer. He used to, I think, lead marketing for Oracle, one of the Oracle product suites. You take example of Girish Mathrubootham, who started Freshworks. I think a lot of this hyperscale growth companies, uh, it's either they actually have very consciously did marketing as a CEO, or they are actually born storytellers. You brought out a very important point. So I think the deal is, if you're not a storyteller, you have to get help. Get help of someone in your team who's good at that, and you start talking about it. It's okay you're not a great storyteller. It's okay to actually make a few mistakes, but the key is to start talking. Start telling stories about your company. How did you start, and what is your objective, and what is the reason of your existence?
Great. Yeah, those are some great points, Ashwin. Thanks again. So, what is a typical day like for you as a growth marketing head? I'm very curious to know.
Well, I think they always looks interesting. I think one answer is it totally depends on what stage of the quarter or what stage of the campaign you are in. But I'll try and simplify this answer actually. I think the day would typically start with looking at your dashboard, looking at your report in terms of let's say you have your North Star as leads and North Star as let's say pipeline, which is slightly a long-term metric. Really start there, right? Because growth is about building a predictable and scalable, let's say, marketing program, programs, to be specific, actually. So it all starts with where do you get, where do you want to get to, let's say, after a month, after a week, or after, let's say, quarter. So it all starts with looking at, few metrics, looking at what are the key things which are working, what are the things, let's say, which needs an immediate fix. Let's say you're running a SEM campaign, like really looking at the past day data, let's say the past 1 week data. Is there a consistent trend in, let's say, a competition coming and really eating up the impression share, right? To all the way to, let's say you run an email campaign and, let's say, you launched an email campaign yesterday, looking at, how many open rates, benchmarking it with, what, what has been the standard, etc. It all starts with the metrics. And the second is really looking at, what is it that you have in plan, let's say for today versus the weekly plan, right? Weekly plan, you possibly have, two campaigns to be launched, one campaign to be optimized, and let's say experiment with a bunch of things. Let's say you got to allocate some time to really let your mind free and think through some of these experiments you want to do actually. And yeah, I think the rest part of the day is all about. Uh, I would definitely allocate one chunk of the or one segment of the day in really putting my thoughts together, which I will possibly not implement it right away, but I will. The moment I get an idea, I will actually go and put it somewhere. You know, let's say you read something and you figure out. Let's say, for example, you know, I read something called the whole idea of comment jacking, right? Comment jacking is a interesting idea where either on a LinkedIn or on a Twitter, let's say one of your competitor, one of the influential person, you know, would go and tweet or, you know, put a post. If you have a point of view, maybe a opposite or a similar point of view, go and comment on it. So the point is, you know, let's say you are a, let's say, an individual, you know, who are essentially, helping companies to build a brand, and then, you know, you're following a marketing influencer. He writes something, he or she writes something, you go and comment on his or her post. There are high chances that people who are reading, you know, this influencer post will also read your comment. So I read about this, and then now I'm thinking about, you know, how do we use this, right? um, I think, to summarize, it all starts with metrics. Then it's about, it all goes to execution, right? So some of the small term are, you know, small term changes we got to do with campaigns, making those changes. Then spending some time with, planning for the campaigns. It be it, writing a copy, or thinking about how do you allocate, or how do you, tweak the budget, in terms of, let's say you're investing some money. And finally, spending some time to really read and, sort of internalize some of the ideas you put up, because growth marketing is all about making some structured experiments and then learning from that. Yeah, I think I will end the day with possibly, putting a plan for the next day, right? Next day, and then prioritizing it. How does it look like? And I think we got to mimic, what you're doing as a structured experiment, for your life itself. Planning your day better and planning your week better.
Right. So, talking about planning, one of the biggest problems that marketers face is planning ahead and making a roadmap, correct? So, how do you go about planning for growth, and who else is involved in this process?
Sure. I think planning is, one place where a lot of the people spend time, and the reality of the reality is not a lot of the plans get executed, right? And that's the reality. And I've gone through this multiple times. No one to blame, right? Because I think the biggest learning from this whole experience is involve the right people when you do the planning, right? Right people would be all the way from sales, let's say your marketing head, your marketing team, and then finally looking at other stakeholders. Let's say you want to do customer marketing, ensure you have the customer success leader involved in at least that part of the discussion. Let's say you want to put out a bunch of engineering blog posts. Don't go and tell them, okay, this is what we're doing, right? They just possibly don't like what ideas we have, right? So involve them, in that segment of the discussion. Actually, I think it all starts with putting a team of people, let's say a representative from each function. Let's say if it's a large enough setup, and then really really aligning them with the key objective, right? So marketing shouldn't work as another siloed function, but the growth marketing has to align very strongly with, let's say, the revenue numbers or the order book numbers companies has. So to give you an example, right, at Capillary, so what we used to do is we used to plan for a lead number. We used to plan for X number of leads and $Y pipeline, which would possibly get consumed in next quarter by the sales team, because we used to have a 3-month sales cycle. So our premise was simple. Our quarter planning was, let's say for Q2, is all about building pipeline, which would get closed in Q3. So Q3 target of sales folks was our Q2 target, translating into pipeline and leads. And this is the kind of orchestration, or this is the kind of sync you got to build. I think you're going to be successful because you are doing a planning which is more outside in, right? You're not going and proposing something which you want, but you are actually doing something which the company wants or which the sales team want. And I'm not saying that you have to go and just run what the company wants, but it has to be about, okay, there is a bigger objective of getting, let's say, $10 million pipeline. Again, you have the freedom as a marketing team to really achieving that. How you achieve it is something where you have a freedom actually. So I think in a nutshell, it's about working with the sales team fundamentally to start with, very, very closely. All starts with, spending a lot of time in figuring out, how the next quarter you want to be at least couple of weeks, not even couple of, maybe 3 weeks before the quarter starts. And then really having a lot of the data points as a standard data points, right? Which is what is the target market size, which categories should we target, and what's the, let's say, what's the volume of people who are in LinkedIn, what is the volume of keywords in search. If you have all of this baseline data points, right, then planning would be a very easy process. Otherwise, every time you go back and say, which channel should I go for, you will ask the same questions every quarter during the every quarter planning. So if you have the data points in one hand, if you have the framework in second hand, and the third hand, if you have a very tightly aligned thought process with the teams, I think the planning would be more about what you execute, what you possibly execute, rather than just a plan which gets presented in the quarterly business review.
Right. So you spoke about experimenting with new channels, correct? So we all know that there are new channels opening up every day for lead acquisition. So how big of a priority is it for you to experiment with these channels, and how would you go about this process?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really a part. That's one of the fundamental responsibilities of a growth marketer. So I'll just go back to the same point. You know, it's a simple framework, right? You got to figure out, okay, there are 10 channels. Okay, which channels has the highest demand, or where your target audience, or where your buyers and influencers go and flock together. It can be a LinkedIn group, to it can be a let's say a Medium platform where people are actually reading about, let's say, about productivity, or it can be a it can be Google AdWords, where actually it's a paid marketing platform, right? It can be about the volume of the searches which people are really trying. So finding this, I think the framework is note down all the channels, note down what's the demand each channel has, and then the second parameter you got to figure out whether this channel requires money, if yes, how much, and also figuring out how much time you will take to get this channel right. For example, if you have a lot of search volume, I think search can be an absolutely important channel to start in early phase of the company, because paid marketing, or let's say SEO, and SEO take time, and hence you have to start, but you can't rely on SEO results from day one. Rather, you would say, if you have money, I'll put it in paid marketing, while I get results from SEO. And paid marketing is important because if it has volume, it would give you immediate results. What I mean is, if somebody is looking for a productivity software, if you get ranked, they come to your website and they submit. Most the chances of them converting into a customer is very high, because they are searching and there is possibly an inherent need. I think we can use this framework where you put in the demand, of each channel, whether the number of people on LinkedIn, number of searches, or what is, let's say, if you want to partner with an affiliate and put a banner ad, figure out, what's the number of, what's the traffic they get every month, and what segment of the traffic is relevant to them. So things like that, right? So demand is one column, and second column is, how much money you would need to get, let's say, the first 10 leads, and the third column is it a short term or a long term game. So if you put this in a matrix, and then the way we should really balance out is lesser money and lesser time it takes to get the first few leads. I think this is a framework we can use, and As I said, in early phase, there is a bunch of things like website, email, SEO, SEM, which is possibly going to work. And the growth phase is all about scaling up a set of things in this early phase. You can also introduce, paid LinkedIn. You can work with some of the GTM partners. If you're working with a cloud vendor like AWS, you should work with them closely. Experiment with a bunch of virtual event webinar kind of a format, right, where you possibly would have gained some traction in early phase. You have an audience whom you can nurture. You can try it in growth phase, and in the mature phase, it's all about doing a set of things in a very predictable manner, based on the learnings. I think this is a phase where you have to really build a advanced, attribution model where, uh, which will tell you, let's say you have 10 channels you're present. Uh, what channels are influencing at what stage? Let's say somebody has come to your LinkedIn ad, but they've actually come to a website after 3 months and then they finally signed up. So you got to build this attribution model, which really helps you understand what channel would help you in what stage, whether it's in a first click or let's say in a last click or everything in between, right? I think that's in a nutshell. I think it's a big topic to cover, but I think if you use this framework, I think people would be able to figure it out.
Great, Ashwin. I like the way you broke the answer down into different phases. Okay, so we spoke about a startup at level 0 some time back, right? So as the company grows, they also look to grow into multiple geographies. And you have helped a number of companies to expand and grow into places across the map. So what are some of the challenges you faced, and how do you go about the GTM strategy?
Sure, absolutely. I think again, as SaaS founders or SaaS in a founding team, I think the beauty of SaaS is you can sell the product to anywhere, literally anywhere in the globe, right? And that's the beauty of SaaS. So I think going back to some of my experiences, right? So fundamentally, let's say at Capillary, we were present all the way from Saudi Arabia in towards the west to all the way till Thailand in the eastern side of the globe. I think so. Some of the learnings from Capillary are especially if you're having a multi-geo approach. I think number one is GTM for every country would change, right? So you can't really copy and paste what has worked in the US, to India, or what has worked in India, to let's say Singapore or Southeast Asian market. You've got to do some experiments. You've got to really spend the same framework I said, right? Let's say you are launching into a new country, or let's say you have 5 different countries and you want to prioritize. Again, you got to use the same framework saying, okay, how big the market is in each country, right? And then what are the different channels where people are flocking in these countries, right? For example, when we actually launched products in the Middle East, in the Southeast Asia. I know Southeast Asia. It actually happened quite early in the phase of in the capillary, and then when we're trying to launch something in the Middle East, things didn't work. We tried to do similar things what we did in Southeast Asia, but to give you a simple example, the number of searches in let's say in Singapore or in Southeast Asia was far lesser compared to let's say in UAE or Saudi, because people were not really searching something, right? They were not searching. Number of people who were searching for a CRM or a loyalty platform in the Middle East was possibly one third, compared to Southeast Asia. And of course, there is the parity of economy, and some of that would come into place. The GTM approach, let's say for the Middle East, was completely different, where we actually work with local partners. We actually worked with them, and then we did a bunch of events. We actually took them to some of the events. So I think it was a more of an offline activity, I would say, where it was completely partner led. While in the Southeast Asia, we took a more digital first approach. I think in a nutshell, the idea is the most important thing is figure out where are you getting signals in terms of the demand, right? For example, you have a global customer who have a presence in, let's say, Singapore, and then can you go and ask them to to get a new business, let's say in Australia? I think one of the simple ways you can do, especially when you have a bunch of global customers, is to ask them to, get you through another new country. I think that's one interesting way to expand your global footprint actually. And I think that's more from a company point of view. I think from a marketing point of view, to sum up, you got to really figure out these early signals, where let's say you're looking at your Google Analytics, figuring out where does the maximum traffic come from, what are the another top 5 countries where your traffic is coming from, right? And use that as possibly one proxy to finalize which country to go. There are other proxies like, you know, what's your strength of your partner network, let's say, what is your set of customers who have presence in a new country, so things like that, right? I think once you have this prioritization framework built, then it's all about going to the second step where you figure out, okay, which channels would possibly work in this country, and whether it is partner, whether it is digital, whether it is event, and then it's all about doing structured experiments and then learning from there and moving forward.
Right. So finally, as numbers are a growth marketer's best friend, or I must say a marketer's best friend, what metrics do you track?
Sure, absolutely. I think it all starts, and I think for a marketing team and for a growth marketing team, it all starts and ends with metrics. It's really a mirror of the performance, right? Performance of the team or a function. I think I'll tell you from the SaaS point of view again, rather than giving a generic answer. I think for SaaS marketing, it's about we can look at metrics in 2-3 ways, right? So one is what I call as funnel metrics. So funnel metrics is all about looking at how many visitors you have for the website, and then how many signups you have, how many MQLs, SQLs, the sales qualified rate, and most importantly, going further down, figuring out what's the pipeline, and then finally closure, right? This is the full funnel approach which is extremely important. So I call this as one bucket of metric, which is a funnel metric dashboard, or the funnel metric report. So second is around the cost, right? Cost is about figuring out what's the cost of acquiring a MQL from a specific channel. So let's say you have cost as a column, and you have different channels. You got to figure it out, and then it's not about figuring out the final. It's not just about having a cost customer acquisition cost as a singular metric, but really breaking that down into granular metrics, right? So what's the cost of acquiring a MQL in different channel, and then going further actually. So it's really about 2 things. One, the funnel metrics. Second is about cost, and really drilling that down channel wise. That is extremely important. So that will help you understand which channel to prioritize. So there might be LinkedIn channel which is giving you a lot of leads, top of the funnel leads, but however it is not converting. So hence you got to figure out how do you convert this insight into nurturing this MQLs into SRLs through using other campaigns. And finally, the third and the most important thing is revenue focused metrics, which is largely around what is the payback period, right? What is the payback period? What it means is how many months or how many years does it take for your customer to become profitable actually, right? And the most important thing in a SaaS world is so what is the LTV, which is lifetime value, and we spoke about the customer acquisition cost, which is either one way to look at is cost of your marketing spend. How much does it take to acquire one customer? So this whole LTV by CAC, it has to be more than 3, and that's one best practice, right? So I think to wrapping up, I think 3 types of metrics: funnel metrics, which will help you assess the entire funnel, let's say for each channel, or as an aggregate. Second is cost metrics, really figuring out cost at each part of the funnel. And third is the aggregate metrics, or the revenue focused metrics, right? Which is LTV, CAC, and payback period.
Okay, great. That was a lovely conversation we had, Ashwin. Thank you so much. I learned a great lot from this, and I'm sure people listening to this have learned a lot as well. And it's always nice to talk to marketing leaders like you and learn from people like you. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's my pleasure and honor, Varun. I think hopefully this would be useful for the audience who are actually listening, and I wish them all the best. And the final thing I really want to tell them is keep experimenting and keep learning. And um, typically 8 out of the 10 cases you would possibly fail in the initial phases, but the most important thing is to figure out uh, a structured way of putting experiments together, and then the chances of failures would be lesser, and other way to look at it is the chances of success would be far higher. And I really wish all of them the best. And you know cheers to metrics and growth marketing.
Thank you, Ashwin. I wish you all the best as well. And thank you and take care. Bye bye.
Thanks, Varun, and then wishing you the best as well. And you were talking about your passion for SaaS, and I really wish you become a successful SaaS marketeer, SaaS leader.
Thank you so much.